Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Blog Podcast. Today's Tuesday, November 27th, 2018. Big podcast today. Going to go over last night's Monday Night Football game. Talk about yesterday's NBA, NHL, and college basketball slates. Do my power rankings for the NFL and college football. Guess the lines for championship week in college football and NFL week 13. And at the end of the podcast, I'm going to do my best bet of the day. All right. Last night, the Houston Texans with a big win, 34-17 over the Tennessee Titans to extend their winning streak to 8. They're 8-3. They're the first team in NFL history to win 8 straight games after starting a season 0-3. Tennessee drops to 5-6. Deshaun Watson, 19-24, 210 yards and 2 touchdowns. Marcus Mariota, 22 of 23, 303 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, another quarterback with only one incompletion. All right, NBA. Decent slate last night. The Hornets defeated the Bucks 110-107. Milwaukee made that game interesting late, and Charlotte pulls it off. They're 10-10. Milwaukee's 14-6. Jeremy Lamb had 21. Kemba Walker also had 21, but a poor shooting day. Marvin Williams had 16. Tony Parker had 15 off the bench. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 20 points, 13 boards, 9 assists. Chris Middleton had 14. Brook Lopez had 15. Eric Bledsoe had 17. Malcolm Brogdon had 11. So every one of their starting 5 players were in double digits in points. And off the bench, Pat Connaughton had 15 with 3 3-pointers. The Timberwolves defeat the Cavaliers 102-95. Minnesota hangs on and gets the win. Avoids the trap. They're 10-11. Cleveland 4-15. Minnesota 6-2 since the trading of Jimmy Butler. Robert Covington, acquired in the Butler deal, had 24 with 7 boards. Andrew Wiggins had 11. Karl Anthony Towns had 21 with 10 boards. Jeff Teague had 13 with 6 assists. Derrick Rose off the bench had 12. Rodney Hood had 20. Tristan Thompson had 16 with 11 boards. Colin Sexton had 11 with 7 boards. Larry Nance Jr., 12 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists. Kyle Korver off the bench, 22 points and 6 3-pointers. The Wizards defeat the Rockets 135-131 in overtime. Washington has been playing a lot better lately. They're 8-12. Houston is 9-10. John Wall, 36 points with 11 assists. Bradley Beal had 32 points. Otto Porter Jr. had 14. Markieff Morris had 22 with 10 boards off the bench. Jeff Green had 13 off the bench. James Harden, 54 points, 8 rebounds, and 13 assists. Eric Gordon had 36. Clint Capella had 17. Chris Paul didn't play due to a sore left leg. The Spurs defeated the Bulls 108-107. Spurs barely avoid the trap. They're 10-10. Chicago's 5-16. LaMarcus Aldridge had 20 with 8 boards. DeMar DeRozan had 21 points, 8 boards, and 5 assists. Bryn Forbes had 13. Patty Mills had 17 off the bench. Jakob Poeltl had 10 off the bench. Zach LaVine, 28.7 assists and 8 boards. Justin Holiday had 17 points with 6 boards. Ryan Areciado had 22, including 4 3-pointers. Jabari Parker had 18 points and 10 boards. The Celtics defeat the Pelicans 124-107. A big win for the Boston Celtics to go to 11-10. New Orleans falls to 10-11. Kyrie Irving had 26 points with 10 assists. Al Horford and Jason Tatum each had 20. Marcus Morris had 19. Off the bench, Terry Rozier had 14. Anthony Davis had 27 points and 16 boards with 5 assists. Nikola Mirotic had 25 with 5 boards. Drew Holiday, 13.7 assists and 6 rebounds. Julius Randle had 15 off the bench. Darius Miller had 11 off the bench. The Pacers kill the Jazz 121-88 in an impressive win for the Indiana Pacers. They are 12-8. Utah 9-12. I think that's your most disappointing team in the NBA right now. Doug McDermott off the bench had 21. Domantas Sabonis off the bench had 13 with 10 boards and 6 assists. Aaron Holiday off the bench had 12. Caleb Joseph off the bench had 13. Corey Joseph. Miles Turner had 16. Bogan Bogdanovic had 15. Tyreek Evans had 14. No Victor Oladipo again, and that's what makes this Indiana win so impressive. Derek Favors had 13. Joe Ingles had 10. Rudy Gobert had 12. The Utah Jazz are really, really disappointing. The Magic fall short of a second straight West Coast win to the Warriors, 116-110. The Magic could have won this game, but the Warriors made the big plays down the stretch as they go to 15-7. Orlando drops to 10-11. Orlando, to me, is still one of the biggest surprises in the NBA right now. Kevin Durant, 49 points, 9 assists, and 6 boards. Klay Thompson had 29. They carried the Warriors by themselves. Nikola Vucevic had 30 with 12 boards and 6 assists. Off the bench, Jonathan Isaac had 15. Mo Bamba off the bench had 11. And Terrence Ross off the bench had 28. Tonight's slate only has 5 games. You have, at 7 o'clock, the Knicks at the Pistons. The Knicks have won 3 in a row. I don't think they'll make it 4 in a row, but covering the 7.5 is very realistic. Detroit needs this game. They're 10-7 and have been a little up and down the last few weeks or so. The Hawks have the Heat at 7:30. This is a must-win game for Eric Spoelstra and the Miami Heat. They know it. The Hawks are a bad team in the East. And Miami is, like Detroit, giving 7.5. 8 o'clock, you have what I think is secretly a great game. The Raptors at the Grizzlies. Raptors giving 5.5. They are, right now, the best team in the NBA, in my opinion. So much depth everywhere. Kawhi Leonard has looked like the Kawhi Leonard of old. The Grizzlies have been one of the biggest surprises in the NBA. Yes, they just lost the home game to their former coach, Dave Fizdale, and the Knicks. I do think the Grizzlies have a chance to win this game outright. The Lakers and the Nuggets. 9 o'clock on NBA TV. This is probably game of the night. The Lakers have been very Jekyll and Hyde through 19 games. So has Denver. Denver, don't forget, got off to that hot start and then only had one loss at a point, and that lone loss came against the Lakers. So it's a bit of a revenge thing for Denver, potentially. And also at 9 o'clock, you have the Pacers and the Suns. This could be a trap game for the Pacers, who won big in Utah and now are on the second of a back-to-back. Phoenix has not played well at all lately. Blew a game against the Celtics in which they should have won. So I can see the Suns giving the Pacers a game here. And in hockey last night, the Rangers defeat the Senators 4-2. Rangers are 13-10-2. Ottawa 9-12-3. Number 1 star of the game with 29 saves on 31 shots, Henrik Lundqvist. The number 2 star of the game with a goal and assist, Mika Zibanejad. Number 3 star of the game with 2 goals, Mark Stone. The Maple Leafs defeated the Bruins 5-2. The Maple Leafs are 17-8-0. The Bruins are 13-7-4. The number 1 star of the game with 38 saves on 40 shots, Frederik Andersen. The number 2 star of the game with 2 goals, David Pastrnak. The number 3 star of the game with 3 assists, Mitch Marner. The Panthers defeated the Devils 4-3 in overtime. The Panthers 9-9-4. Devils 9-10-4. The number 1 star of the game, the overtime goal, Mike Hoffman. Number 2 star of the game with a goal and 2 assists, Jonathan Huberdeau. And the number 3 star of the game with 2 assists, Sami Vatanen. The Capitals defeat the Islanders 4-1. This is where my parlay lost. I took the Islanders with the other 4 teams that won, and the Islanders fall short. They're 12-9-2. The Capitals are 14-7-3. 6 straight wins for the Capitals after not winning back-to-back games all season. So, Capitals playing good hockey. The number 1 star of the game with 2 goals and an assist, Tom Wilson. The number 2 star of the game with 32 saves on 33 shots, Braden Holtby. And the number 3 star of the game with the goal, Valtteri Filppula. The Blue Jackets defeat the Red Wings 7-5. This was a blowout. Detroit made it real interesting there at the end, and Columbus pulls out the victory. They are 14-8-2. Detroit drops to 10-11-3. The number one star of the game with a goal and 2 assists, Artemi Panarin. The number 2 star of the game with a goal and an assist, Bumgarner, and the number 3 star of the game with an assist, Dylan Larkin. Tonight's slate is pretty good. You have at 7 o'clock the Sharks and the Sabres. Sabres on a winning streak right now. They're going for 10 in a row. The Senators and the Flyers. The Flyers just fired their GM yesterday. Senators on the second of back-to-back. Hurricanes Canadiens at 7:30, as well as the Ducks and the Lightning. 8 o'clock Avs Predators, Coyotes Wild, Penguins Jets. Golden Knights Blackhawks on NBCSN. This should be a good one in the United Center. Two teams that are motivated a little bit. Vegas is starting to play a little better. Blackhawks have not played that great since the firing of Joel Quenneville. I like the Golden Knights here to get the win on the road. They're favored in the game. They're deserving favorites. They're your reigning Western Conference champions, and I think they're going to come out with a good performance on national TV. The Stars and the Oilers at 9 o'clock, and then the Kings and the Canucks at 10 o'clock. College hoops. Results from yesterday, some big ones, including Nebraska defeating Clemson 68-66. A big-time win for the Cornhuskers as they go to 6-1. Clemson drops to 5-2. Wofford upsets South Carolina 81-61. A huge win for Wofford to go to 5-2 on the year. South Carolina drops to 3-3. Delaware defeats Louisiana Tech 75-71. Delaware 5-2. Louisiana Tech 4-3. Bethune-Cookman defeats Stetson 84-74. Cookman is 3-4. Stetson 1-6. Radford defeats Glenville State 102-69. Radford is now 5-1. Appalachian State defeats Winston-Salem 91-64. App State is now 2-4. Alabama defeats Murray State 78-72. Big win for Avery Johnson. They go to 5-1. Murray State gets their first loss. They drop to 3-1. Number 25, Mississippi State defeats Alcorn State 88-65. Mississippi State 5-1. Alcorn 1-6. Iowa State defeats Omaha 82-55. Iowa State 6-1. Omaha 3-4. TCU defeats Eastern Michigan 87-69. TCU 4-1. Eastern Michigan 4-4. Rio Grande Valley defeats A&M Corpus Christi 68-59. Rio Grande 5-3. A&M Corpus Christi 4-3. Southeast Louisiana defeats Louisiana College 86-71. Southeast Louisiana is now 3-4. UTSA defeats Houston Baptist 86-82. Roadrunners are 2-5. Houston Baptist 2-3. Boston College defeats Minnesota 68-56. A big win for Jim Christian to go to 5-1. And Minnesota drops to 5-1. Number 1, Gonzaga defeats North Dakota State 102-60. Gonzaga 7-0. North Dakota State 2-5. Cal defeats Santa Clara 78-66. Cal is 2-3. South Carolina is 1-5. Santa Clara. Pepperdine defeats Idaho State 97-82. Pepperdine 4-2, Idaho State 2-3, and last but not least, Texas Southern upsets number 18 Oregon 89-84. Southern is 2-4, and Oregon drops to 4-2. Tonight's slate is a pretty sizable one. 6 o'clock, Hartford and Sacred Heart. St. Francis hosts Blamsburg. 6:30, Fox Sports 1, Maryland Eastern and St. John's. 7 o'clock, Illinois Notre Dame in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. I think Notre Dame takes that one. ESPN 2, number 13, Virginia Tech at Penn State. Big opportunity for Penn State to get a big win here, but I don't think so. Buzz Williams gets the job done on the road. Western Carolina, Wake Forest, Kennesaw, Georgia, North Florida, and the Gators. East Carolina and UMC Wilmington, UMass Lowell and UConn, Charlotte Davidson, Central Penn at Elon, Iona, Ohio, Tiffin and Ball State, Stony Brook, Norfolk State, American and VMI, East Tennessee State and Georgia Southern, High Point and the Citadel, Hiwassee and Chattanooga, Bruton Parker and Mercer, Greensboro and UNC Greensboro, Arkansas Pine Bluff and Cincinnati, Howard Payne and Abilene Christian, Cedarville and Wright State, Wiley and Southern, Number 9, Michigan State and Louisville, 7:30 ESPN. This is on right after the college football playoff show. This is a big spot for Chris Mack to get his first signature win at Louisville. It's a home game. But maybe in any other year, I'd pick Chris Mack, but he just doesn't have the talent on this Louisville roster. So I'm going to take Tom Izzo and the Spartans to get a key road win here to boost their resume up a little bit. After losing to Kansas in the opener, they need to beat somebody okay that's a Power 5 school because they missed an opportunity, I thought, on opening night to steal a win against Kansas. UL Monroe, Northwestern State, Penn and Delaware State, Missouri State, S&T, and Southeast Missouri State, Northern Kentucky and Morehead State, 8 o'clock Savannah State, Vanderbilt, Charleston Southern, Marquette, South Dakota and Baylor, North Texas, Oklahoma, Lamar SMU, UT Arlington, Tulsa, Boise State, Drake. Number 5, Nevada and Loyola Chicago is a fun mid-major game for Loyola Chicago, but Nevada's not really a mid-major. They are a Mountain West school, and I don't consider Mountain West schools mid-major. But this is a nice opportunity for Loyola Chicago to get a win to boost their at-large resume. They have 2 losses already on the year. And if Nevada gets by Loyola of Chicago, then there's going to be talks of that team going undefeated. Fairleigh Dickinson and Providence at 8:30 on Fox Sports 1. 9 o'clock on ESPNU. Pitt at number 14, Iowa. Pitt and Iowa are both undefeated. This is a big spot for both of these teams. I think Iowa gets the win here. They're just the better team. Jeff Capel's done a good job so far, but I just don't see him getting a big road win in Iowa City at all against an Iowa team that is pretty solid. NC State at Wisconsin. Wisconsin is number 22 in the country. They've done a nice job so far. Their lone loss came against Virginia. NC State's undefeated. I think Wisconsin is going to hand NC State their first loss of the year tonight in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. Temple at Mizzou at 9 o'clock as well. Eastern Washington at Washington. North Dakota, Montana State. Benedictine, Arizona at Weber State. Southern Illinois, Colorado State in the Mountain Valley and Mountain West Challenge. Indiana at number 3, Duke, 9:30 ESPN. I think Duke is going to destroy Indiana. Indiana's a nice team. I like Archie Miller, and I think that program is heading for big things in the future and is going to be a stable in the Big Ten for years to come under Archie, but they're not winning at Cameron Indoor against Mike Krzyzewski and all the talent on his squad. West Coast Baptist at Idaho at 10 o'clock. 10:30 Jackson State at San Diego State, and 11 o'clock Cal State Northridge at Washington State. Now I'm going to do my college football power rankings. I'm going to do it like I did a few weeks ago. I know I took a while off from power rankings because of the crazy schedule of the podcast and the Thanksgiving activities and in my hiatus. I'm going to do what I did a few weeks ago, do 25 through 7, like how the College Football Playoff Committee does it. And then I'm going to go from 1 to 6, and then I'm going to go down from 26 to 130. So much has changed within the last couple weeks. Some new teams have emerged. Some teams that were doing well have fallen apart a little bit. So, without further ado, here are the college football power rankings as we head into championship week. Number 25, I have the Stanford Cardinal. I think the committee's going to put them in the bottom 5 of the college football playoff rankings because they're Stanford and they seem to get the benefit of the doubt. They're quietly 7-4. They've had some weird games and weird luck, and Bryce Love hasn't had the year that many people thought. That's a team that I think is a big bounce-back candidate for next year. Number 24 is Fresno State. They've had a phenomenal season, and they were a few plays away from being undefeated. Number 23 is Iowa State. They've had a great year. Matt Campbell is a coach that I think has a chance of leaving for a better job down the road. Could be this year, could be next year. Number 22 is Texas A&M. They had the big overtime win against LSU, which I think will keep them in the rankings. Jimbo Fisher in year one, I think, has done a superb job. Number 21 is Boise State. They can steal that last New Year's Six bowl spot if UCF trips up against Memphis. Number 20 is Syracuse. This team has had a phenomenal season. Dino Babers might be my pick for the ACC Coach of the Year award. I'm going to do my college football awards, I believe, on Thursday's podcast. Number 19 is Northwestern. What a turnaround for them. They lost to Akron, and now they're in the Big Ten title game. Number 18 is Mississippi State. Joe Moorhead's done a nice job in year one, despite some inconsistencies and a poor year from Nick Fitzgerald. Number 17 is the West Virginia Mountaineers. This team was off to a phenomenal start, lost their last two games. But to be quite frank, they're a couple plays away from being in the top, perhaps 6 of the college football playoff rankings. And I think Dana Holgorsen has done a great job this year and in his tenure at West Virginia. Number 16 is Utah, quietly 9-3, and in the Pac-12 championship game, they have a chance to be in a New Year's Six. Number 15 is Kentucky. Phenomenal season for the Wildcats. I don't think anybody would have thunk that they'd be ranked this year, let alone the top 15 of the rankings. 14 is the Texas Longhorns. Tom Herman's done a phenomenal job this year. They're a West Virginia 2-point conversion miss away from being much higher in these rankings. And sure enough, right now they're in the Big 12 title game, and I think this year has been a success for Todd Herman in Texas. 13 is Penn State. They, to me, have been a disappointment. I thought that would be your Big Ten representative in the college football playoff this year, and I thought Trace McSorley would have a career year, but that turned out to be not the case. As I think James Franklin could be looking at other jobs and whatnot. I think Penn State is one of the big winners in USC not firing Clay Helton, because I think James Franklin would have been a front runner for that job. And I think James Franklin has done a phenomenal job in State College. Number 12 is LSU. Ed Orgeron is another coach that I think did a phenomenal job this year. You can make a case he deserves the Coach of the Year award in the SEC. There's a couple guys, obviously Nick Saban and obviously Kirby Smart. I almost said Shaka Smart. That's the wrong sport. Joe Moorhead, Jimbo Fisher. There's a lot of guys in that conversation. And I think Dan Mullen, who I have number 11, Florida. I think Dan Mullen has done an excellent job this year with the Gators. LSU and Florida, I think, are two of the big surprises in the SEC this year, as well as Kentucky. And I mentioned how the SEC Coach of the Year has a ton of candidates, but I'd pick Mark Stoops because I don't think many people thought that Kentucky would be this good this year. Talked about LSU and Florida. I'm at number 10, and that's the Washington State Cougars. I think it's a no-brainer who is winning the Pac-12 Coach of the Year, and that is Mike Leach. I don't think anybody thought that Washington State would be in play for the playoff at Thanksgiving, but that was the case this year. Well done job by Mike Leach. And Gardner Minshew had a career year too. Number 9 is the Washington Huskies. To me, a bit of an underachiever this year, but got hot late in the year and put themselves in a good opportunity to make the Rose Bowl. Number 8 is UCF. Phenomenal season. I think their undefeated streak and winning streak is on the line this week against Memphis, and no Mackenzie Milton this week. Number 7 is Michigan. Despite their loss to Ohio State, you can make a case Jim Harbaugh is very deserving of the Big Ten Coach of the Year award. I think that he's done a good job this year despite losing to Ohio State yet again. But this team's very talented, and they're probably going to find themselves in the New Year's Six Bowl again. And now the top 4. Number 1, no doubt about it, Alabama Crimson Tide. Best team in the country all year. Tua Tagovailoa is going to win the Heisman Trophy. I'd be stunned if he didn't at this point. Number 2 is the Clemson Tigers. The quarterback change from Kelly Bryant to Trevor Lawrence was the key move for Clemson this season, as Lawrence gives the Tigers some upside and gives them, I think, a chance to upset Alabama potentially down the road. Number 3 is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. The National Coach of the Year should be Brian Kelly for getting this team undefeated. And his quarterback change worked out for them too, from going from Brandon Wimbush, who I was dead wrong about. I thought he'd be great this year, but he was benched for Ian Book, which turned out to be the key move of their season. And Dexter Williams having a breakout year as well at running back for them helped. Number 4, for now, the Georgia Bulldogs, who, if they win this week against Alabama, they will be in the college football playoff. And I think Kirby Smart yet again has done a phenomenal job. Number 5 is the Oklahoma Sooners. Lincoln Riley, I think, has put himself and his team in a great position to make the college football playoffs despite an awful defense. But you just got to give them credit. And my case for them over Ohio State is that Ohio State had the terrible loss to Purdue. And for Oklahoma, they were a missed kick away from being undefeated. So that's my argument, Oklahoma over Ohio State for the college football playoff. And Ohio State is my number 6. What have they done outside the big win against Michigan to make you believe that this is a playoff-worthy team? They need some breaks. They need Texas upset Oklahoma, in my opinion, along with a couple other things for themselves to get into the college football playoff. Obviously, Georgia has to lose 2. And that's it for my top 25. Now I'm just going to go from 26 to 130. 26, I have the Oregon Ducks. They've fallen off a little bit at the end of the year, as well as quarterback Justin Herbert. 27 is the Memphis Tigers. You can make a case for them for the 25 spot, but I gave it to Stanford instead. They have a great chance to upset the apple cart a little bit this week with a win over UCF. 28 is Utah State. They missed a golden opportunity for themselves to be in the Mountain West Championship game, but give credit to Boise State for getting that win. Number 29 is Missouri, who has been hot over the last few weeks. Their quarterback's been playing great football and is making himself a case to be a first-round pick this year. Number 30 is Pitt. They are in the ACC Championship game. Number 31 is Cal, who has finished the season very well. Number 32 is Wisconsin, who I think has been the Big Ten's most disappointing team this year. 33 is Iowa. They've been a little Jekyll and Hyde. 34 is NC State. They're one of the big what-if teams of the season, in my opinion. Number 35 is Auburn, who underachieved this year, most notably losing at home against Tennessee. 36 is Army, one of the biggest overachieving teams of the season, quietly 10-2, with the loss at Oklahoma, and they lost at Duke earlier in the year. It wouldn't floor me if they were in the top 25 this week. Appalachian State is 37. Don't forget that they almost upset Penn State on opening night this year. 38 is Buffalo. Phenomenal season with their lone loss coming against Army. 39 is Troy, who had a great year this year. 40, Boston College, who was great, and then the Clemson game happened and their season sort of unraveled. 41, Purdue, who had one of the weirder seasons that I can remember. And if they didn't lose all those close games earlier in the year, they'd be in the conversation for perhaps a New Year's Six Bowl. 42, Georgia Tech. A little Jekyll and Hyde for them. 43 is Temple. They've had some ups and downs too. 44, Cincinnati, who has had a phenomenal year this year. 45 is Arizona State. I think Herm Edwards did a fantastic job in year one. 46, Virginia. I think Bronco Mendenhall did a good job this year. 47, Miami. I think the biggest disappointment in the ACC this year. I thought they'd win the Coastal, but I was wrong. Mark Richt might be a coach on the hot seat now. 48, Houston. They had a chance to be in the AAC championship game, but some injuries held them back a little bit. 49, Oklahoma State. They've had so many ups and downs this season, with the ups being upsetting West Virginia, downs almost upsetting Oklahoma, and really could have thrown a monkey wrench into this national title / college football playoff race, because if they upset Oklahoma, then Ohio State would be in a better position to make the playoff. 50, Wake Forest had the impressive win at Duke to become bowl eligible. Duke is 51, who fell apart at the end of the year. 52, Virginia Tech. They're a win away from bowl eligibility, but they've had a disappointing year. 53, Michigan State, the other obvious choice for most disappointing team in the Big Ten. They've had some ups and downs this year. They almost lost to Utah State in week 1. And that could have changed Utah State's season. 54, UAB, who has been one of the better teams in Conference USA this year. 55, Middle Tennessee, who is the opponent for UAB in the Conference USA championship game. 56 is South Carolina. They've had some ups and downs this year. Probably going to finish the year 7-5. 57, TCU. Had to take them the final week of the year to become bowl eligible. They lost to Kansas this year. 58, Baylor. They're also bowl eligible in Matt Rule's second season. I think Rule has done a phenomenal job this year after having a disastrous season last year. 59, Vanderbilt. They're bowl eligible. 60, Florida State. Very disappointing year for them. They're probably the biggest disappointment in the ACC this year, not Miami, because I think many folks thought that Florida State could have been a big surprise this year and could have had a bounce back on their new coach in year 1, but nope, not the case. Number 61 is USC, probably the most disappointing team in the Pac-12 this year. Clay Helton is back, surprisingly. 62 is Marshall. They've had a good year. 63, North Texas. They've had a solid year. 64, BYU. They're bowl eligible. 65, Arizona. Another disappointing team in the Pac-12. I thought they were going to win the Pac-12 South before the year, but I was dead wrong. I'm not impressed with Kevin Sumlin and what he did in year 1. Obviously, a very dismal season for Khalil Tate. 66, Minnesota. They're bowl eligible. They've got lucky to become bowl eligible, with Wisconsin deciding to lay down last week. Number 67 is Maryland. They're one stop away from being bowl eligible. 68, Indiana. 69, Tennessee. Jeremy Pruitt, I think, did a good job in year 1, despite only going 5-7. 70, Ole Miss. I think this school's eventually going to be heading back in the right direction after its bowl ban will be lifted. 71, FIU. They've had a phenomenal year this year. 72, Northern Illinois. They have a chance to upset Buffalo in the MAC championship game. 73, Tulane. They are in a bowl game this year. 74, Ohio. They've had a good year. 75, Nevada. They've had some ups and downs this year. 76, San Diego State. They had a weird year. They probably should have been better. 77, Colorado. What a collapse by them that led to the firing of Mike McIntyre, and now they're looking for a new coach. 78, Georgia Southern. They had a good year. 79, South Florida. They've had a major collapse. Charlie Strong's team I'm talking about. 80, Texas Tech. Cliff Kingsbury is no longer employed by that school. 81, Kansas State. Will Bill Snyder be back next year? That's remained to be seen. 82, Nebraska. I think that Scott Frost's team will be a big bounce-back candidate in the Big Ten next year. A lot of close games for them. Or else maybe they're in a bowl game. 83, UCLA. I think Chip Kelly's team showed a lot of promise there at the end of the year. And I think that is a possible bowl team for next year. 84, Hawaii. They started off the season undefeated, and then they've fallen off because their quarterback got hurt. 85, Wyoming. I think expectations were higher for the team before the year, but they somehow found their way to a bowl game. 86 is SMU. They missed out on a bowl game after losing to Tulsa in the final week of the year. 87, Louisiana Tech. They had a weird home loss to Western Kentucky to finish their regular season. 88, Eastern Michigan. They've had a good year this year. 89, Toledo. I thought they'd be a little better. 90, Western Michigan. They found their way to a bowl game. 91, Arkansas State. They're in a bowl. 92, Southern Miss. I thought they'd be better. 93, Miami of Ohio. They played their way into a bowl spot. Impressive by them. 94, Air Force. Disappointing year for them. 95, Louisiana. They're in the championship game against Appalachian State. They're, I think, by far the worst team that's playing in championship week. That's playing for a conference championship. UL Monroe is 96. I think they had a decent year this year to get themselves bowl eligible. 97, Illinois. Lovie Smith's back, which has surprised me. 98, Tulsa, who upset SMU in the final week of the year, but still a disappointing season for them. 99, Navy. I think this was the biggest disappointment in the American Conference this year. 3-9, and they're going to be a double-digit underdog against Army next weekend. Coastal Carolina at 100. They're one win away from a bowl. Number 101 is Liberty. They're a win away from a bowl. And they have had a good year in their first year in the FBS. Actually, no, Liberty's not bowl eligible because it's their first year in the FBS. That's my bad. But still, a great year for that program. 102, Charlotte. This was the most improved team in Conference USA this year. 103, FAU. Talk about disappointments. This is, you can make a case, is the most disappointing team in college football. I thought expectations were very high for Lane Kiffin, but damn, they're 5-7 and not in the bowl game. I don't think anybody saw that coming. 104 is UNLV. They upset Nevada in the final week, and then they upset San Diego State a few weeks ago. 105, Colorado State, a disappointing year for them. 106, New Mexico, disappointing year for Bob Davies' team. 107, Arkansas, Chad Morris, year one, disappointment. 108, Oregon State. Jonathan Smith's team showed some offensive capabilities a lot throughout the season. I think that's a program heading in the right direction eventually. 109, Louisville. Depending on who they hire, that program should be back before we know it. 110 is North Carolina. Mac Brown replaces Larry Fedora. We'll see how that goes. 111 is Kansas. Les Miles replaced David Beaties, and I think Kansas quietly may be heading in the right direction. I wouldn't be shocked if they picked off a couple people in the Big 12 next year. They're coming to Lawrence, because I think that program's going to be a little excited next year. Number 112 is Rutgers. Chris Ashton's a coach on the hot seat going into next year. They've shown no progress under him whatsoever. 113, East Carolina. Not a good year for them. 114, Ball State. They played well for a little while, then fallen off. 115, Old Dominion. They had the upset over Virginia Tech, and they really didn't do anything after that. 116, UMass. Disappointing year for them. They fired their coach. 117, Akron. They had a disappointing year. 118, New Mexico State. Disappointing year as they went to the Independence. 119, UConn. Yet another disappointing year under Randy Edsall. 120, Western Kentucky. They pulled off the upset over Louisiana Tech this past week to salvage themselves a little bit. 121 Bowling Green. They got rid of their coach. 122 UTSA, very disappointing season for the Roadrunners. 123 South Alabama, not a good year for them. 124 Texas State, they picked off a couple people this year. 125 Georgia State, what did they do other than that big upset win that they had earlier in the year? I forget who that was over. 126 Kent State, not a good year for them. 127 UTEP, 128 Rice, 129 Central Michigan, 130 San Jose State. All those teams are supposed to be bad, those final 5 teams that I just listed. Now I'm going to guess the lines for championship weekend in college football. We'll start Friday night. You have the MAC championship game, Buffalo against Northern Illinois from Detroit. I have Buffalo as a 7.5-point favorite over Northern Illinois, and Buffalo is only favored by 3.5. That's surprising to me. Someone knows something. Utah at Washington, I have the Huskies minus 8.5, and the Huskies are favored only by 5 in the Pac-12 championship game. That's going to be played in Santa Clara at the 49ers Stadium. You have Texas against Oklahoma from AT&T Stadium. I have Oklahoma as a 7-point favorite. Oklahoma's laying 7.5, so a half-point off. Drake at Iowa State. I have Iowa State by 50. Iowa State's favored by 42.5. Louisiana at Appalachian State. I have App State by 16.5. They're favored by 18. East Carolina at NC State. I have NC State by 24, and that's what the line is. Akron at South Carolina. I have South Carolina by 21. They're favored by 29. Marshall at Virginia Tech. I have Virginia Tech by 13.5. There's no line posted yet. UAB at Middle Tennessee. I have Middle by 3. Middle's only favored by 1.5. Norfolk State at Liberty. I have Liberty by 30.5. Liberty's only 4.5, so I guess Norfolk State's better than I thought, or Liberty has a big injury. That line questions me, because I just think Liberty's better than Norfolk State. Stanford at Cal. I have Stanford by 3.5. Stanford's only minus 2.5. Memphis at UCF. I have UCF by 7.5, but that was when Mackenzie Milton was not ruled out yet. Now that he's ruled out, I have UCF as only a 3-point favorite, and that's what the line is. Alabama against Georgia from Atlanta. I have Alabama by 8. Alabama's favored by 13. Fresno State at Boise State. I have Boise by 3. Boise by 2.5. Clemson against Pitt from Charlotte. I have Clemson by 20. Clemson's by 26.5. And last but not least, Northwestern against Ohio State. I have Ohio State by 10.5, and Ohio State's favored by 14 in Indianapolis. All right. NFL power rankings real quick. At 32, I have the Arizona Cardinals. 31, the Oakland Raiders. 30, the New York Jets. Those are, I think, the 3 worst teams in football. The Raiders beat the Cardinals, so that's what makes me put the Raiders ahead of them. Josh Rosen has not shown progress. The Raiders are just a mess. And Sam Darnold, in limited time, really hasn't shown much either. I feel like he's regressed more than progressed. 29 is the San Francisco 49ers. They're back to being a bad team after Nick Mullins put up a couple good games. 28 is the Jacksonville Jaguars. They benched Blake Bortles for Cody Kessler. That's all you need to know. 27 is the Buffalo Bills. They got the win over Jacksonville. Josh Allen showed some promise in that game. 26 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and 25 is the New York Giants. Giants ahead of the Bucs because the Giants beat the Bucs. The Bucs are just a bad team, bad defense. Jameis Winston is now starting over Ryan Fitzpatrick. Giants back to their old losing ways after a terrible second half in Philadelphia. 24 is the Cincinnati Bengals. They lost Andy Dalton for the year. They probably should be lower than this, but they still have talent on their roster, and that's why I have them ahead of the likes of the Giants and the Bucs. 23 is the Washington Redskins. They lost Alex Smith for the year. That's the reason why they're next to the Cincinnati Bengals. They're 2 teams with some talent on them that lost their quarterbacks. 22 is the Detroit Lions. Dismal loss on Thanksgiving. They should have won that game. 21 is the Cleveland Browns. They showed a lot of improvement in those 2 wins over the Falcons and the Bengals. Number 20 is the Tennessee Titans. 2 bad division losses in a row against the Colts and Texans on the road. Miami Dolphins are 19. They just really aren't that good. I don't know how they're 5-6. 18 is the Atlanta Falcons. This is probably the highest ranked bad team on the list. But here they are. Number 17 is the Green Bay Packers. They're 4-6-1. Very bad loss, or brutal loss, I should say, against the Vikings on Sunday night. Aaron Rodgers did not play well at all. 16 is the Denver Broncos. They have some talent on their roster. I'm still not a big fan of Case Keenum, but he's done a nice job this year. 15 is the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson is now their starter, but Joe Flacco could be back after the injury. 14 is the Philadelphia Eagles. They got a big win over the Giants last week to get themselves within a game of 500. They have a chance to steal this division. Number 13 is the Dallas Cowboys. I think this is the most improved team in football over the last couple weeks, with a big win in Philadelphia and then a big win in Atlanta. And then they got the big win over Washington. You could argue those were all lucky wins because Washington, no Alex Smith. Atlanta made some mental mistakes in that game. And then same for Philly in that Eagles game. But got to give the Cowboys credit. The acquisition of Amari Cooper has really helped Dak Prescott in that offense a lot. And Jason Garrett's on the verge of saving his job. Number 12 is the Carolina Panthers. 3 losses in a row. They pushed themselves to 6-5. Number 11 is the Indianapolis Colts, who have been playing great football lately. 5 straight wins. Have a great chance for 6 in a row against the Jaguars this week. Number 10 is the Houston Texans. A big win over the Titans this week to get themselves 8-3. 8 wins in a row is 8 wins in a row, but I don't think they're a top 5 team in the league. I think they're top 10. Maybe it's because I picked this team to go to the Super Bowl before the year, and Deshaun Watson hasn't had the year I thought he'd have. That's probably why I am downgrading them a little bit. But hey, they're 8-3. Bill O'Brien deserves credit for turning them around after starting 0-3. Number 9 is the Seattle Seahawks. They're 6-5, and they're playing great football right now. I think Russell Wilson has to be in consideration for the MVP award. Number 8 is the Minnesota Vikings. They got the big win over the Packers. Their pass rush was phenomenal in that game, as well as their secondary. And they have some 2 tough games coming up with New England and Seattle, both on the road. Maybe they split those. Maybe they go 0-2, or they could go 2-4. I think it could go one of those 3 ways for sure. And none of it would surprise me, to be quite frank. Number 7 is the Chicago Bears, your first place representatives in the NFC North. Mitch Trubisky might be back this week for their game against the Giants. Number 6 is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Trap game in Denver. I think they have a golden opportunity to bounce back in a big way against the Chargers on Sunday night. 5 is New England Patriots. They are 8-3 on the year. And they really haven't been great. And that's a scary thought for them. Number 4 is the Los Angeles Chargers. They've been playing good football lately, despite losing that game to the Broncos a few weeks ago. Number 3 is the Kansas City Chiefs. They're phenomenal. I think Patrick Mahomes is the MVP frontrunner right now, as long as the Chiefs are playing good football. But my case for him over Drew Brees is that Drew Brees is on the best team in football. Yes, he's the best player on that team, but that defense has been great, unlike the Chiefs' defense. And Mahomes has carried the Chiefs more than Drew Brees has carried the Saints, in my opinion, this year at least. And number 2 is the Los Angeles Rams. They had the big win over the Chiefs. And then they're coming off the bye. Interested to see how they perform. They could get Aqib Talib back soon to help out their secondary, which has struggled lately. And number 1 is obviously the Saints. I think this is the best all-around team in the NFL. Their defense is great. Their offense is phenomenal. Drew Brees is making no-name receivers look like superstars each and every week, and that's what makes him so great. And now guess the lines for Week 13. Speaking of the Saints, they're at the Cowboys Thursday night, and I think they will be a 6-point favorite, and they are a 7.5-point favorite. The Ravens at the Falcons, I have the Falcons by 2.5, and that's a pick'em. Broncos at the Bengals, I have the Broncos -6, no Andy Dalton, and the Broncos are only favored by 4.5. The Rams at the Lions, I have the Rams by 8.5. The Rams are favored by 10. Cardinals at the Packers, I have the Packers by 14, and that's what the line is. Bills at the Dolphins, I have the Dolphins by 3. Dolphins are favored by 5. Bears at the Giants, I have the Bears by 2, but if Trubisky plays, then I'd put it at 5. Right now, it's at 4.5. Panthers at the Bucks, I have Panthers by 3.5. That's what the line is. Colts at Jaguars, I have Colts by 3. But without Bortles, that should be 6. It's at 4. Browns at the Texans, I have Texans by 5. Texans are favored by 6. Jets at the Titans, I have the Titans by 4.5. The Titans are favored by 9. I think that's ridiculous. Yes, the Jets are one of the 3 worst teams in football, but Tennessee shouldn't be favored by near double digits against anybody. The Chiefs at the Raiders, I have the Chiefs by 13.5. The Chiefs are favored by 15. The Vikings at the Patriots, I have the Patriots by 4.5. The Patriots are only favored by 6. The 49ers at the Seahawks, I have the Seahawks by 7.5. The Seahawks are favored by 10. The Chargers at the Steelers, I have the Steelers by 6. Steelers are favored by 3.5. Redskins at the Eagles, I have the Eagles by 6. The Eagles are favored by 6.5. And that's guess the lines for Week 13. Quickly, some baseball news. The Giants are open to trading Madison Bumgarner. That is very interesting, to say the least. I predicted that he'd be traded to the Yankees several times on this podcast. I wouldn't rule that out, but they're saying that Philadelphia and Milwaukee are the front runners right now. And I think that those teams have the assets to pull it off. They'd have to pay a hefty price for it. I'm sure the Giants would want a top pitching prospect from one of them. But I still wouldn't rule out the Yankees in this conversation. Even Atlanta, I think, could be in play here. Obviously, Houston's in play because they lost Lance McCullers Jr. due to Tommy John surgery. And Dallas Keuchel and Charlie Morton are free agents. So don't rule out the Astros in any Bumgarner trade talks. Last but not least, best bet of the night. Courtesy of DraftKings, I'm going to take a 4-team hockey parlay. Taking 90 cents plus 506 to win $4.56 with a payout of $5.46. Flyers, Sabres, Lightning, and the Wild on a moneyline parlay. And now that's it for the podcast today. I'll be back tomorrow recapping NBA, NHL, college hoops. Look ahead to tomorrow night's slate and all of those sports. Talk more baseball off season, power rankings, NHL and NBA, and anything else that happens in the world of sports. Hope you guys have a great day, everyone.